So you might ask yourself the question, why do we even study this stuff if we already know that it's good for the local economy? But there's actually a whole bunch of reasons that we might study sports. One being that it's part of our culture. It is deeply ingrained in American culture. So sociologists, for instance, do a lot of sociological analyses of sports. But linguists also do a lot of analysis of sports because the language, the vernacular of American English is riddled with sports metaphors. If I really screw up this presentation, you might say, well, he swung and missed. Or if I really do a really good job with the punchline at the end, maybe he stuck the landing. You don't have to be a baseball or a gymnast fan to understand what those references are, what they mean. It's just part of the vernacular that we've evolved over time. Now, my focus has been, why are we spending public money, tax dollars, on sports? What's the value? What are we getting back for that? And that's what has really been driving a lot of the work that I've done for the last 2 decades now. And this is an issue that goes back to antiquity. When we think about the original Olympics and the gladiatorial games in Rome, these were all state-sponsored entertainment events. Chariot races and whatnot, those were all in facilities built by the state dollars. So you might immediately start by asking yourself this important philosophical question. Isn't sports a private enterprise? Aren't these firms that we're talking about, the private sector? Why is government building the facilities for private enterprise? Walmart wouldn't come to your town and say, would you build me a store so I can do my business? Walmart's a pretty healthy firm. Well, so's the NFL. They do it all the time. They ask us, the taxpayers, to pay for these facilities. And they say that they do this for 2 reasons. This is the most common excuse or reason that we're given, is that it creates jobs and it generates money. It generates money for some, more than others, but it generates money. So that's where my focus has been over the last 20 years, is really getting at this, because we, the people, have spent billions in the last several years on a whole host of new facilities for sports teams. Detroit, which has certainly been in the news a lot the last couple of years, has invested heavily in sports. New baseball stadium, new football stadium. They're about to break ground on a new hockey arena because they desperately need that. It's going to somehow save Detroit. The Phillies got their new facility, their new baseball park recently. The Seahawks built a very noisy football stadium. And of course, it may have something to do with why they're in town this week. Not inexpensive, and some pretty pricey land right there on the Sound. The Indianapolis Pacers currently playing in Bankers Life Fieldhouse, another one of the basketball arenas that have been built over the last 20 years. Nationals Park, when baseball finally had a team relocate, they actually left Canada. From Montreal, the Montreal Expos moved to D.C., got a new stadium, publicly subsidized, and now they're the Nationals. Uh-oh. There we go. The Colts, this is one of the deals that I was involved with. The Indianapolis Colts got a new facility. They left the Hoosier Dome, or what became known as the RCA Dome, the white dome in the background, moved across the street and built this new, very large facility for the Colts, also known as Luck Field, because they got a new quarterback at the same time, and he's done pretty well for them. Time Warner Arena. This was an arena built in Charlotte, in downtown Charlotte, for what is now called the Hornets again, the NBA Hornets, even though the citizens voted it down twice, not once, but twice, and the city council still said, no, it's too important to the local economy not to build this. And so they built it anyway. This did not go over well with the citizens. People lost their seats over this. I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. I'm originally from Dallas, so I bleed silver and blue. I am still in mourning that my Cowboys are not in town this weekend. But the Cowboys have a very interesting case in this whole thing, in that this is the house that Jerry built when he knocked down the old Texas Stadium that had the iconic hole in the roof. That was in Irving, Texas. It wasn't in Dallas. They haven't been in Dallas since the early 60s. That was in Irving, knocked it down. They moved 13 miles to Arlington. Now this is important. I'm going to come back to this point in a minute. And they built what if you've ever wondered what the Death Star must have looked like under construction, this is what it would have looked like. It is huge. You just cannot appreciate it on TV. You can't appreciate it until you are physically in it, just how big this thing is. You can take the Empire State Building, stand it up in there, no problem. You can lay it down, no problem. It's big. It's a monstrously large stadium and absolutely technologically amazing. And the really interesting thing what Jerry Jones did to pay for this enormously large stadium is that he's capitalized almost every square foot somehow or some way, including a lot of different restaurants, like 38 or so restaurants, a whole a wide array of cuisines that are represented there, all sorts of shops for souvenir buying, but even normal shops. There's even a Victoria's Secret in Dallas Cowboys Stadium, or AT&T Stadium. Really, who would be going to the game to buy Victoria's Secret stuff is an interesting question, but they do. So there are a lot of amenities. And what he did is he surrounded the stadium with a sea of concrete for parking. There's nothing around the stadium. Everything happens in the stadium so that the Cowboys organization can capitalize on the revenue streams that are happening due to the stadium's presence. Did I do that again? Yes, I did. So the Giants and the Jets got a new stadium in the Meadowlands just across from New York City. The Yankees got a $2.3 billion baseball stadium in the Bronx. This isn't even in Manhattan. This is in the Bronx. They paid $2.3 million, of which $1.2 billion came from the state, from the taxpayers, local and state government. And if that wasn't enough, they also built a stadium for the Mets over in Queens. New stadium for the Mets. So this is a lot of money has been spent on sports in the New York City area in recent years. The run that opened this year was the 49ers opened their new stadium, but they're no longer in San Francisco. They're 40 miles south. It's kind of like the Dallas Cowboys haven't been in Dallas for a long time. The 49ers are nowhere close to San Francisco anymore. They're down in Santa Clara, but that doesn't sound right. The Santa Clara 49ers is a little odd. And we're not, I should say, we're not just focused on the four primary sports and the top tier of those sports, like the NFL, the NBA, NHL, and baseball. Cities are spending a lot of money on a whole host of other sports as well. Charlotte is learning this lesson harshly right now, having built the NASCAR Hall of Fame. When they built it and projected attendance, NASCAR was at its pinnacle of popularity. The next day, it started to tank. It has gone down steadily ever since. Viewership is down, attendance at the races is down, and the NASCAR Hall of Fame, when it opened in 2010, has lost money every day since. The city of Charlotte has had to bail them out just last week to the tune of $18 million on their operating budget. Indianapolis, long heralded as a city that knows how to do sports, has just unveiled a new potential soccer stadium, the soccer-dedicated stadium for the downtown area. So they're looking to expand their sports investment as well. Charlotte opened a stadium for the Knights, a AAA minor league team. So we're not just talking about the major leagues, but also we built facilities, a lot of them, for the minor leagues as well. This stadium is almost the identical footprint to the new stadium that was built for the Cubs over in Mesa that opened this year as well. The difference that this stadium, built in a downtown for half the price than the one in Mesa that's only used for spring training for 4 weeks. This one gets used a lot more, and it's in the downtown of Charlotte, which makes economically a lot more sense. So this is the one in Mesa, and it literally is almost identical in terms of number of seats, layout, etc. So you might ask yourself the question, what do we, the taxpayer investors, what do we get out of this investment? What's our rate of return? And again, the two most common answers we get is money and jobs. But what kind of jobs are we generating with sports? Are we high-end technical jobs? They're going to pay really high six-figure wages? Probably not. We tend to get lower-end service sector jobs that don't pay well. So if you look at the amount of money, the amount of salary that's generated by these investments that we're making in sports, it's really a questionable investment when we pay upwards of $100,000 per job created, and then you look at what kind of job that we're creating, you got to wonder how long it takes for that job to pay $100,000. It's several years. So the stuff that I've been doing over the years has really been trying to capitalize or to measure this impact to determine how much of it is actually growth. How much of this impact is actually growth? If I go downstairs to the vending machine and I pay $1 to buy a drink, okay, 95 cents of that dollar is going to go right out the door to the vendor. about 5 cents or so is going to stay to the person who actually loaded the machine in the form of their salary. Okay? So the impact, there's a $1 impact when I buy the drink, but then there's this other 5 cents, this additional 5 cents that I'm going to contribute to the local economy when he or she spends that nickel somewhere else, hopefully in the local economy. So I have both a direct impact and an indirect impact, and that's how we measure economic impact. But what would I have done with that dollar had I not spent it on that vending machine? Well, there's a Starbucks right over here. Could have spent it there instead. So how much of that dollar is new growth to the local economy? Not a lot. So when we look at sports, we look at the total amount that's being spent as a result of the sports, but how much would not have been spent but for the sports venue being there? That's the important question, and that's what we've been trying to do, the economists that work in this area have been trying to do for several years. One of the problems is, like I said, the drink downstairs, 95 cents of that dollar is going to go to the vendor, to the manufacturer, and they're going to be out of town. So that 95% of that dollar is gone. It's leaked out of the local economy instantly. Only 5 cents is going to stay and hopefully rattle around a little in the local economy. We want that money to stay in the local economy as much as possible. Alternatively, we want people from out of town to bring in new money. That's why hosting the Super Bowl is important, because we have a lot of people from out of town coming in and spending money that they wouldn't have spent here but for the Super Bowl. So that's good economics. There's also the problem of substitution effects. So if I didn't spend the dollar on a drink downstairs at the vending machine and I go over to the Starbucks and spend it instead, all I've done is substitute what I was going to spend anyway. That's not new growth, it's just substituting an effect. So if we are a community that doesn't have a sports team and we're going to build a new facility, we're going to attract a sports team, this is a new venue, something new for the community. How much of that is new spending that people are going to be doing? Are they going to be taking money out of their savings to go to a game? Probably not. They're probably going to, instead of going to the movies, or maybe instead of going to a basketball or a symphony or some other entertainment venue, instead they're going to take that money and they're going to shift it, they're going to substitute, they're going to shift it over to the new sports venue. Okay, so that's not new growth. You're still getting just entertainment dollars, the same dollars that are being spent just on a different entertainment venue. That's it. That's not good economics, particularly when it's the taxpayers that are making the investment in this. Opportunity effects is another problem with these public investments in sports. The $99 million spent on the new facility in Mesa for the Cubs spring training stadium, well, that's $99 million that can't be spent on anything else, such as police officers, fire, schools. Schools have a much bigger economic impact than sports teams do. So these are foregone opportunities. That's what economists call it, foregone opportunity costs. And that has to be taken into account. What was the better alternative that we could have perhaps achieved but for the fact that we spent it on sports? The fourth problem with sports and economic development studies is that we typically look at what a jurisdiction spends on the entertainment venue. So look at what Glendale did to build the arena there and the stadium, and some of the minor league or some of the spring training facilities. That money is spent locally by the local jurisdiction. But the benefits, so those are the costs, the benefits are not collected by the local government because the people who work at these facilities don't necessarily live in Glendale. So how does Glendale capture the benefits of being the host? A good example of this is you all are in downtown Phoenix right now because of the Super Bowl. You're not in Glendale. Glendale does not like this particular aspect of economic development talk. Regional economies maintain their spending a lot better than an individual municipality because money does not recognize political jurisdictions. Money just flows. And so it's very easy for people to work at the stadium and live somewhere else. So they're not paying property taxes out in Glendale that subsidize the stadium. So there's not a lot of actual growth associated with sports. If you build a new facility that doesn't already exist, a team that doesn't already exist, all the new spending that's going to come with that is maybe 25 to 30% is going to be new spending that would not have happened but for that. The other issue is that, quite frankly, it's just too small to matter. Sports is just small potatoes from an economic perspective. When you look at the size of a regional or even a city's economy, sports is just small. It's like 2 Walmarts. It's just not that big. So we're still waiting to see the impact of the Rams having left LA like 20 years ago. I mean, a lot of people in LA aren't even aware that they left. It just doesn't matter to a local economy. Just like getting a new team doesn't matter to a local economy. It's not about the money, and it's not about the jobs. So what might it be about? If it's not about the economics, what might it be about? 2 quick possibilities I'll leave you with, and then I'll shut up. One is, it may not be that you can create lots of new jobs and new income flows to your community, but you might be able to redirect where the spending's taking place. So if you have a rundown part of town, say next to the Anacostia River in Washington, D.C., build a baseball stadium. If you have an area in the core of your downtown that used to be manufacturing districts of companies that left long ago, like in Cleveland, build a basketball arena for the Cavaliers, right next to a baseball stadium, the Jake, for the Indians. And suddenly, the people come. These people do not live in Cleveland, because most of the people in Cleveland can't afford to go to a game. These people come from outside of town. So now what Cleveland's doing is using sports to subsidize local activities, to subsidize local public services, because they can tax these people who are coming from out of town when they come to these games, tax them at the door, tax them with a ticket tax, for instance, or parking taxes, hotel taxes, all those sorts of things where we can export the impact of the tax. So that's one thing. You can redirect where the spending is and use that spending to rehabilitate, if you will, a particular part of your community. The net amount of economic activity, not going to change. Where the activity takes place in your community, that can have a very palliative effect on your local community. Now, the other thing that you might say justifies a public investment, this is where a lot of our more recent work has been, is that it generates civic pride. This is where, it just feels good to be the hometown to this team. As a longtime Dallas fan, I feel this. I still feel attached to Dallas because of the Cowboys, much more so than J.R. Ewing. I'm attached to the Dallas Cowboys. A lot of folks still feel that attachment even after they've moved to Phoenix. And a lot of folks in the Phoenix area still have attachments elsewhere. You look at all the jerseys walking around downtown, there's not a lot of just one team, except for the Super Bowl teams. Not a lot. There's a whole melange of different teams that are out there. But citizens feel some sense of pride, some sense of psychological benefit of being the hometown. And that can be monetized. We can actually estimate what is the economic value of that sense of pride that you feel for being the hometown team. That's where we've been doing a lot of our work. This is where the economists start getting a little nervous about us, because we're trying to monetize feelings. Feelings don't exist in true economics. So how do we actually do this? There's a whole methodology behind this that we do. But when we did this for the Colts, in order to come up with a plan to help finance the new Lucas oil field, became the new Lucas oil field, we were asking folks their willingness to pay for that intangible benefit, that civic pride. And we asked them a series of questions about how much they'd be willing to pay. And utilizing, we did it in different categories. So, I'd pay $80 to $180, $160 a year for that. We took the bottom of each of those ranges and estimated if that many people in the state in each of those categories paid the bottom level of that, we would have twice as much money as necessary to cover the public's obligation for that stadium. And that's what they did. They actually utilized a taxing jurisdiction around the stadium to capture the economic benefit of that, because people who go to the games, they're willing to pay more. People who don't go to games, they don't want to pay a whole lot, and that's fine. People who do go to the games, they derive more benefit, they should pay more for this. Basic capitalism. So we actually helped create this taxing jurisdiction that helped pay for the creation of the new stadium there, based on not the economic impact it's going to have. Remember, they were already playing just across the railroad. They were playing in a stadium. So there's not a whole lot of new stuff going on because the Colts moved 100 yards across the railroad. What they're getting is to be home to the Indianapolis Colts, and they take a great deal of pride in that. So relocating spending and civic pride are far stronger justifications for any public investment in these stadiums, assuming you agree with the premise that the government should be involved in subsidizing a private market good, entertainment. That's a big assumption, and that's a whole different discussion that we'll do maybe next year. So thank you. I'll shut up now, so thanks.